Last conic section, hyperbolas. Hyperbola is just an ellipse turned inside out. So if you can imagine an ellipse, and we basically cut it, and then we flip it on itself. So the problem is, how do you draw the graph? So we don't want to plot a lot of points. So we're going to have to do some things in order to create this rectangle. So the first thing we do is we find the center. And then just like an ellipse, we count the spaces and we make, instead of the ellipse, right? The ellipse really lives right here. So instead of the ellipse, we create this rectangle. The rectangle is there so we can draw the diagonals. These are the asymptotes. And then that tells you how to draw the curve. The parts are the same. A is for the vertices, B is the other direction, and C is for the focal points. Now the super main important difference is that A squared is first. So the order super duper matters. So let's just draw some of these graphs here. We'll go through how to write the equation of the asymptotes as well. That's obviously very different. So the center is across the top. I can't get myself together here. So that's 0, 0. A squared is first. It's not bigger. It's first. So up and down, because that's your y, we're going to go 4. These are the vertices. So the vertices are at 0, plus or minus 4. So then left and right, we're going to go 6. These don't have names. Now, instead of drawing that ellipse, now we draw the rectangle. Now, this is sometimes awkward because you don't really know like how far to go. Sometimes you go a little too far. Just approximate. Now, the diagonals of this rectangle are the guidelines or the asymptotes to draw the graph. You draw the graph from the vertices or from the first one. So that's how you know if it goes up or down or left and right. The first value tells you that. Now, the focal points. C squared is equal to something a little bit different. This is now A squared plus B squared. You will always be given that formula. Make sure you look at the correct one. So we have 16 plus 36. So C squared is equal to 52. And the square root of 52 is plus or minus 2 radical 13. Now, C is a pretty big number. Usually it's going to always be bigger than A because your focal points exist inside the curve. Now, you don't have to draw the graph, and I don't even know if those are accurate, but I just wanted to show you where the foci are. So from the center, we're going to go up and down. So the focal points are at 0 plus or minus 2 radical 13. Oops. Yep. There we go. Now, for the asymptotes, these are lines. Y equals mx plus b is a terrible way to write a line if we don't have that information. What we have is point and slope. So we're going to use y minus y sub 1 equals the slope times x minus x sub 1. So we're going to use the center and the slope. So y minus the y value of the center. I don't know what the slope is yet. X minus the x value of the center. Now your slope is always, and always has been, y over x. So go back up to your problem. What number is underneath y? Okay, that's a 4. What number is underneath x? That's a 6. Got to take the square roots. We don't want a squared and b squared. We want a and b. So now our slope is 4 over 6, which reduces, of course. So we're going to have plus or minus 2/3. You always have plus or minus because you have two slopes, one going up and one going down. Now the graph for number 3, that grid is kind of messed up, so I'm going to skip that one. Number 2. Take a look at number 3. It's just a little bit easier grid to work with. Order matters. You want the y squared, which you can see is negative. We want that y squared to be second. So when you rewrite this, let's put it in a good order. X squared minus 4x minus 4y squared plus 24y. Get the 36 out of there. We don't have to factor anything for the x's. They're ready to go. Now you have to factor a negative 4 out of this. You're forcing the minus sign in the middle, and you're forcing this y squared to be a positive 1. That changes the sign, so this is a minus 6y. And of course, you know we're going to add 2 things to that side. Half of 4 is 2, 2 squared is 4, half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9, but remember, you got to multiply by the number on the outside. Ooh, that's a negative. We're actually going to subtract 36 now. So in a hyperbola, sometimes you subtract, but only on the right-hand side. So let's write this. X minus 2 quantity squared minus 4 times y minus 3 quantity squared equals, looks like 4. It still needs to equal 1, so it feels like an ellipse. And then we reduce this. I'm going to write the 1 because I want to have that there. So we are asked, now the directions are way up at the top. Let's go through all the parts again. Center. 2, 3. We use the center for a lot of things. That's why you're constantly asked for it. The entire graph comes from the center. Now your vertices. Your vertices are controlled by the first one. First one is x. So that means a squared is 2, sorry, a squared is 4, so a is plus or minus 2. And we're going to go left and right, because that's underneath the x, from the center. I would, before the picture gets too crazy, look at those points and write down the coordinates. So we have 0, 3, and then we have 4, 3. Then the other direction, we're going to go 1, because that's the square root of 1. And we have this tiny little rectangle, which you need to draw, please. Then you draw the diagonals of the rectangle. And now you can draw, again, x is first. Now we can actually draw the hyperbola. So it comes from these x's, so it goes this way. And there's your hyperbola. Now you're asked about the other parts, of course. Let's do the focal points. We need c squared. So c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared. So that's already 4 plus 1, right? That comes from here. So we have c squared equals 5. So c is plus or minus square root of 5. This has to be added and subtracted from the x value. So we start at the center, right? Because the focal points are moving left and right. The focal points are not moving up or down. So the y value is the same. But the center was a 2. We add and subtract radical 5. Now the asymptotes. Equations of lines always start with y. So we do y minus the y value of the center. Plus or minus goes to 2 slopes, and then x minus the x value of the center. Now the slopes are y over x. So we take the square root, that's 2. Sorry, that's not a 2, that's a 1. I always do that. So, sorry. This is going to be 1 over 2. Oh, it doesn't reduce, so we're good.